You're listening to What's Contemporary Now, a show about culture and the people, places, and things that together make it up.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
Ludovic de Saint Sernin, or simply LDSS as the fashion sphere has come to know him, is one of those rare designers whose name still feels fresh, yet already carries the weight of recognition. With the debut of his collaboration with Zara, his reach now extends far beyond that rarefied world that first embraced him. What began as a study in sensual minimalism and coded subcultural reference has evolved into something broader, more accessible, but without losing its soul. In his first ever podcast interview, Ludovic speaks about the discovery of queer culture, the formation of self, and what it means to find yourself both established and exposed. The designer learning once again how to create from a new kind of freedom.
This is Ludovic de Saint Sernin, and we're talking about What's Contemporary Now.
The first question I have to ask you is about your name and how people butcher it. How often does that happen?
You know what? It's not the easiest name to pronounce if you're not French. And even if you're French, it is a mouthful. Most people say now they'll call me Ludo or they'll call me Ludovic. If they try to say the full name, it's very brave of them and I salute them and I appreciate it so much. But that's also why we shorten it sometimes to LDSS, because that just makes it so much easier internationally for people to be able to recognize it. My birth name is even longer. So this is only my French name.
Oh, what does that mean? What's the full one?
My dad is Portuguese.
Okay.
So I have my mom's name. So my dad is Ataide Monteiro Portugal. So it's like Ludovic Ataide de Saint Sernin Monteiro Portugal, which is insane.
I just feel like it's one of those names that you have to at least try to say properly with a French accent. I don't even know how you would say it without a French accent. How do people say it as an American or Brit?
Ludovic de Saint Sernin. That's how they try to say it. We actually made the cutest video a few seasons ago backstage with the models, and everyone was trying to say the name. Some people got it, some people really struggled, but it makes for a really fun video.
Yeah, it was cute. I actually feel like I saw that on YouTube and I was impressed by how many people did it right.
Yeah, not that bad. Not that bad. It's like YSL, like Yves Saint Laurent has been around, so he paved the way for me. But you know what? After my second season, I think it was, I did the LVMH prize and I met Karl Lagerfeld and he came to my booth. And the first thing he said to me, he like read my name and he was like, "Oh no, this is too long. You got to change your name." I didn't listen to his advice because that's just my name. I can't change it. It is what it is.
No, I love it. I think it's definitely memorable. That's for sure. Before we get into the fashion of it all, we start at the beginning of everyone's story to hear people in their own words and kind of tap into those experiences early on in life that sort of shaped them as the people they are today. So let's start there with you.
I was born in Belgium, in Brussels, to a French mom and a Portuguese dad. My dad at the time was working at the European Commission, and that's where him and my mom met. And I lived there until I was 2 years old. And then we moved to Africa, to the Ivory Coast. And we lived there for 5 years. That's where my 2 little sisters were born. And we had the best time growing up because it was such a beautiful environment, really sunny, really free, lots of friends. We would go to the beach every weekend and it was just like a really beautiful upbringing. My dad was going to move to Argentina. My mom was like, yeah, you go ahead and get it all settled for us. And she ended up asking for a divorce instead. And we moved to Paris. That was like a big shock for me because I didn't know Paris at all. We moved in with my grandma. And that's when I realized how important fashion is and presentation and what you wear represents who you are. That first day of school being in Paris, I grew up in the 16th arrondissement. So it's super Parisian, super posh and super fashion. Like even being a kid, you had to be wearing labels to be relevant. It was a real shock for me. But then understanding that, I was like, oh, wow, there's so much power in choosing what you're going to wear in the morning. And that could be defining your day or your year. It was obviously so different from Abidjan and the Ivory Coast. Back when I was in Africa, I used to sketch landscapes and nature and The Little Mermaid and my favorite Disney's. And then moving to Paris, I started sketching fashion and pursuing fashion and falling in love with fashion. And that's what led me to pursue my career. I always knew I wanted to be a fashion designer. And my mom was incredible at identifying that and sending me to classes to learn how to sketch, to learn how to paint, to learn how to sew, and really prep me for fashion school. And she was just the best at understanding that that was my dream. Even though no one in my family really has artistic or fashion or creative background, everyone's in politics. She was like, I believe in you and let's try to do this. She was incredible, super supportive.
You've mentioned travel as something that you enjoy as a form of escapism, and escapism can also offer things like inspiration. So what role is travel playing in your life today?
I grew up traveling a lot. My mom really wanted me to be discovering the world and practice English. I would go to every English speaking country, like from Australia to the US to Ireland and England and a little bit everywhere in the world. And I would do these trips on my own, which when you were 12 and 13 and being sent to like a friend's house on the other side of the world, it sounds so scary, but it's so much fun. And it's so inspiring because you take a risk and you're like, I don't know this environment. I don't even know the language. I don't know the people, but it's always been something that I absolutely love. Lately, I've been traveling a lot for work, which doesn't always allow for pure inspiration and reset and discovering something new because you're just go from like a fitting to an event to a whatever it could be. And so you don't really get to enjoy the space as much, but you enjoy discovering people within your community and the community that you build. And that is super inspiring to me because everywhere I go, I'll be posting a story on Instagram and then someone will be like, oh my God, let's connect. And that's how you create amazing relationships, either like an amazing personal relationship or a professional one. My work is so intertwined between personal and professional that usually if I become friends with you, it's because you inspire me and then we'll end up working together. So in that aspect, I love traveling.
Speaking of inspirations, I mean, we'll definitely get into the sort of nuance and detail, but including things like queer culture, the incorporation of yourself in the brand, and different things that could otherwise be considered quite niche, knowing that coming up as a successful fashion brand has its own challenges regardless. Did you ever have any fears, concerns, either of your own or from your business partners around whether or not there was a questionable amount of commercial viability with those types of directions being taken? Because it is quite specific, right?
When I first started the brand, I think my biggest thing was that I didn't find that there was any brand that I could fully relate to or that directly spoke to me. I always knew I wanted to eventually start my own label at some point. I didn't have like a master plan, a 5-year plan or anything really drawn out or like marketed in any type of way. What I did was after graduating from Dupé in Paris, the fashion school I went to, I started working at Balmain for 3 years and it was like the most amazing experience. And I loved working with Olivier. He's just an incredible guy and a great designer. And he taught me so much during these 3 years. He was so generous. But I knew that it was either I was going to be a designer that was going to be successful in a studio and go up the studio ladder eventually to climb into creative director, or to take a risk and leave my job and start my own thing and see what would happen. And so eventually I left Balmain, and I just was going through so much personally that anything that I had done in the past, usually if you're a designer, just work on your portfolio and what you've done in the past, what you've done in school, what you've done at work. That was totally relevant to me. And the only way that I could think to present myself to the world at that stage was to create something new. And so I did this first collection mostly on my own, just like sewing from my home, and presented it. And it just was that coming out and coming of age collection that was super, super personal. The way I looked at it was that it was an extract of my diary, and that I was letting the world into what I was going through and wondering if anybody could relate, or if anybody could identify, or if it could touch anyone. And in a very open and vulnerable place that I was like, okay, let's put it out in the world and see what happens. So we did this first collection, and it was so well received, and the press loved it. And then immediately buyers wanted to buy it. And I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? So I started doing production, and I just discovered all of it organically. I wasn't prepared to really start a business. I think the business side of it came into it organically. We quickly identified, as I started surrounding myself with business people and advisors and mentors, that idea of creating a brand based off of someone's experience and their uniqueness was such a great tool, because it was defining a new way of experiencing fashion in a way that Rick has done in the past, and like some other designers have done in the past, but in the generation of social media and Instagram, where you anyway pour your whole life out there. The personal aspect to the brand has been there since the beginning, and been a source of inspiration for each and every collection. It's not only the idea of writing a chapter of what my story is, it's also writing a chapter and holding a mirror to what society is going through and what my community is going through, what it's like to be a queer person in the world today, what it means to be visible and queer and free and fearless when things are not the greatest and can be scary. And I think that has become something where, like I said in the beginning, my whole family is into politics, and I was escaping politics by wanting to be a creative person and having a creative outlet. And I didn't anticipate that would soon become an incredible tool for and a platform for very strong messages and political statements. I think podcasts are really interesting because as designers, we have the opportunity to talk about our collections and our messages and our dreams and our vision through possibly interviews when you're backstage at shows, or interviews for magazine, but people don't really want to know that much more, or they're not that curious. So I think I was really excited to sit down with you and talk about deeper subjects, because that's an opportunity for people to understand where I'm coming from and to understand what the brand stands for in a way that's beyond beauty and aesthetic. So I'm really excited to get talking together.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. That is something I did want to work ourselves up to, which is, of course, in the context of a brand, through the lens of a designer, there's typically this idea of its person, right? The brand world, who the woman is, who the person is. And you're talking about the message going beyond those more brief interactions of interviews backstage or in the context of a magazine or whatever. So let's delve into that. What is that world? What is that message? And similar to what you've just touched upon when it comes to things like politics and the state of affairs in the world and how that might inform your creative choices, what is the intention, not to be reductive, behind the messaging of what you're working on today?
Whether I'm in the street or I'm in a gallery or museum or at the club, wherever it is, when people come to me or through a DM on Instagram, whatever kind of form it can be, and that they feel like by seeing my work, they became free, because that was a thing for me that was holding me back for years. Because I grew up in a very conservative family, religious and aristocratic background, quite sheltered. And I wasn't really exposed to queerness or different kind of ways of living. I grew up being straight and thinking that was me because I didn't have any example around me of anyone that was gay or queer or lesbian. And so I thought that was it. And then going to fashion school, I discovered so many identities and sexualities and fluidities and all of these things. And I was like, wow, that's really inspiring. I just don't know even how to take that step. I love it for everybody else. And I love if people are thinking that they can flirt with me, whether they're a man or woman. And that's so fun, but I can't go there. I was like, oh, I read Just Kids by Patti Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at the time I was 23 and I had been with girls before, but I was single at the time that I read the book. And I was surrounded by queer people wondering if I could relate to that. And then I read Just Kids and all of a sudden it just clicked. And I was like, oh my God, Robert and I are the same person. I wish. He's obviously like my biggest idol. But it was the first time that I could identify with a man who was with a woman and were madly in love and discovering their identities together as people, but also as artists. And eventually he ended up being into guys and discovering his sexuality and exploring that sexuality through his work as well. And I thought that was super inspiring. That allowed me to be free to be whoever I wanted to be. From that moment on, it became my thing of he was able to do that through his own art form of photography and art. I was like, what would be that message in fashion? And how can I free people from society pressures and allow them to be themselves? So when I get people telling me like, oh my God, I bought something from you and it made me feel so beautiful, so sexy, so myself and so free, is just the biggest win for me. I think contributing to fashion and queer culture and being visible, sort of a guide for people to come into their own is what I'm trying to do. Obviously, that's the creative in me. And then back to your question earlier about how do you turn this into a business? That's the whole challenge, is to scale it up, but without losing its spirit and its original form of authenticity. So I guess that's the challenge as you grow the brand, is how do you go from season one that's very innocent and very young to then being 8 years in and you're no longer a young designer with an upcoming brand, but you're not an established brand either. That's the whole new chapter that we're navigating now, where we're also opening the brand into a bigger spectrum of possibilities and collaborations. And it's just really exciting to scale it up.
Of course. And I'm sure doing the spring summer 2024 collection in collaboration with the Mapplethorpe Foundation was a full circle moment, given what we've just touched upon.
The biggest full circle moment, because being able to work with someone that's gone is incredibly rare. He knew before he passed that he wanted people to be able to collaborate with him. And that's why he started the foundation, which is so genius. It was my dream to do it since the very beginning, because that's what was the starting point of me building my brand. But I waited years and years because I wanted to be really ready to be able to honor him and fill in the place where we could really be collaborators and work together. And I'm saying it as if he was alive at the time that we did the collaboration. But to me, he's so alive through his work that it feels like he's still here. My thing was to think about it. What would Robert want to do today? How would he want people that he photographs to look like? And my whole thinking behind the collection was to kind of have the people from his pictures come out of the frame onto the runway, and for it to be a reflection of what New York is now and what it represents. And that was very exciting. I wanted to show something that was as personal and delicate and innocent, and show that arc of like the flowers to a picture of a dick, and how beautiful and important both are in his work, and how he's really elevated sex and gay sex and queer sex to art form. That's one of the big subjects that I like to work with. And it can be taken not seriously because people are just like, yeah, sex sells, and they don't really take sex so seriously because it's skin and because it's just something that not everybody's comfortable with or not everybody respects. Having Robert as an example of someone that has put so much value in it and that it became such an important piece of art, that was really helpful to elevate the message and for people to take it seriously. If he was alive today, my biggest dream would have been for him to shoot my campaigns. So for example, for that season, I worked with Ethan James Green, who shot the campaign and was with me that day because we shot the campaign the same day as we did the show. And we did the show in New York, which was so important to me. Ethan to me is like the new Robert in the sense that he is that beautiful human being. And at the same time, he's extremely talented and he can photograph people really beautifully, but also photograph himself really beautifully. He's like part of his own art. And he's so connected to that incredible New York community of creative. It was a really beautiful day. The whole experience was amazing because obviously it's like a season, so it's 6 months, but I really took the full 6 months to work on it because I knew I wanted to dedicate as much time to this collection as I could. A lot of the pieces that were the flower pieces, I was hand cutting all these delicate organza and velvet pieces and placing it on the garments and doing all of the handwork. And also with the crystal mesh and the metal mesh, I was doing a lot of these pieces myself because that's how I started and I still love to do it. Obviously, I don't have as much time to be able to do every single garment and it takes a village to put on the show, but I was really adamant that I wanted to have some pieces made by me on the runway because it was Robert. So yeah, that was amazing.
You've also talked about sexuality being a part of one's life and even a part of fashion, but you're not seeking provocation. So how do you approach the politics of representation without kind of sensationalism?
I think when it comes to representing sex or evoking sex in my work, at the end of the day, what I try to do is present a beautiful image. I think with the experience of the references that I have that have shaped who I am, whether they're real experiences of life or whether it's an exhibition or seeing a photograph, I think what is important is at the end of the day, is it a beautiful image that you're presenting? And if it's beautiful, then it should be accepted. That's where I stand with it. I never want it to be vulgar or pornographic or provocative in the sense that I'm a really shy person, even though not everyone gets that. I would never want anyone to feel any way negative about me, like not in a people pleaser way, but just in a respectful way. But I still think it's important to talk about. So I don't want to shy away from it, even when it can be in difficult contexts, censorship and homophobia or transphobia. All these things are a reality today. So I think it's very important to keep believing in being visible and showing strength in this representation because other people before us have done it and never gave up and were a great inspiration. I just want to keep it up, but I want people to take it seriously, I guess.
You've done an incredible job at leveraging those variables that are very much part of our humanity in creative context. And you've put yourself in your own campaigns, as we touched upon earlier. So it's interesting to hear that you think of yourself as being shy, because there's a level of vulnerability when you're not just putting your work out into the world, you're putting yourself in the work out into the world. So what was the reason behind that?
That all happened really organically. That first collection was just like, here's me, here's my introduction to the world. This is what I love. This is what I stand for. And it's something that is so interesting because actually I got scouted when I was 17 and when I was going to fashion school, model agencies wanted to sign me, but I wanted to be a fashion designer. And if I was a model that then became a fashion designer, I thought people were not going to take me seriously. And looking back at it, I think I could have had more fun, but I was so focused on my career and what I wanted to come out as in the industry, that nothing would be taking me away from that focus. And eventually, when you become a designer and you put out your work, people want to take your picture. They want to do interviews. They want to know the person behind the work. That's something that when you're in fashion school, you don't even think about what your identity is going to be as a designer and what kind of designer identity you're going to build next to your brand. Are you going to be a guy that's going to come out in a navy sweater and jeans and Converse at the end of the show and just do a shy hi and bye? Or are you going to be flamboyant, John Galliano or Donatella Versace, or super cool like Rick? What is it that you're going to do? And so that became a conversation slowly but surely, because what I was doing was so autobiographical. It felt right for me to represent it. Because when I was starting the brand, I was talking about fluidity. I was talking about identity and not having to define the gender of the clothes, and that the gender is defined by the wearer. Who cares if a guy is wearing a dress? I want to wear a dress and it feels natural to me. If it looks good, like, why are you mad? You know what I mean? I couldn't really at that time be like, okay, here's this person, she's going to represent that, or he's going to represent that. It was the easiest way because it was so personal to me for me to embody that. So it became the natural choice. I think the first time I ever featured myself in a campaign was because I was shooting with Willy van der Peer, and the collection was talking about heartbreak. And it was about my breakup with my ex. And it was during COVID. Back then, when teams were working, we would have to be such small teams to be able to do any type of work. Willie and I had a conversation and he was like, I can't think of anyone else better to represent the message of this collection than yourself. I was super touched and honored that he would consider shooting me because he's one of my heroes in fashion. He was so clear that was the vision. And I was like, I can't say no to Willy van der Peer. If he wants me to be in the campaign, I'll be in the campaign. And so that was the first time we did that. And that became a really strong message at the time for this. And then it became part of the brand where my message was be your own muse and own who you are, not in a cocky way or not in like a selfish way, but more like, oh, it's so liberating to put yourself out there and gain that confidence and that trust in yourself. A few seasons later, I worked my own show, which was a gag because no one was expecting that. And it's also then doing it, I realized how complicated it is to navigate, to be a model in your show and to be the creative director at the same time, because you're out there getting everyone beautiful and ready to go. And then you have to put yourself in the lineup and you're like, oh, I'm like in between Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid. What's going on? So much fun. And it was the first time that I actually worked a show. And then a few seasons after, I also closed for Rick, which was also fun. And then I appeared in the Ethan James Green campaign, and I appeared as my feminine self in a dress, and I appeared as my masculine self in a leather coat. But again, that day, I was never even going to be in the campaign. We had models booked, and then the team was like, if you think about Robert, and if Ethan is not going to be in it, then you have to represent that autobiographic side of his work. And he would take so many pictures of himself. So you have to do it. And so I did it. Every time we've done it, it's been very spontaneous, but it's also been fun exploring what it's like to be a designer in 2025 and deciding if you're going to embody your own work or if you're going to let the work talk for you. And I think that with everything that's happened, it's been the natural progression that I am one of these designers that embody their own work. And in a way, when I worked my own show, it was more to show a community, a togetherness, and stop the separation between the runway models and collection and the designer, because sometimes it feels like a disconnect. What I wanted to represent was we're together in this. We're a group of people and we love each other and we want to stand strong together. There's no hierarchy. There's no separation. it's about community. And that I think was a very powerful message of self-acceptance and togetherness. I think that's what I actually love about doing it, beyond being happy with the picture later or having an iconic moment or whatever. I think designers, we sometimes take our job so seriously, we forget to have fun. And I think fashion should be fun. Some of my favorite designers have played with their image, like Marc Jacobs is one of my biggest idol. And he was in his own perfume campaign on Saint Laurent as well. It's a legacy that I love and that I love contributing to.
I think it's not just yourself. Obviously, it's been very well received and the consumer enjoys it as well. And those are good references with Yves and Marc, because in my head, I thought John, during the time he spent at Dior, would always come out in the character of the collection and the person he had designed for. And then you see people like Nadia Lee Cohen or Cindy Sherman, who are very much obviously embodying their own work as creatives. But I didn't really think of it through the lens of designers as far as that being a common practice, and thought that really stood out in how you approach things. But it does feel quite modern in the way that not only is it a nod to embodying the kind of world that you're creating and those stories, but it also feels quite modern in the multi-hyphenate nature we've all found ourselves in. None of us are really subscribing exclusively to that box that historically you would choose and stay in.
Exactly. And I think that's the literal opposite of what I was doing when I was growing up. It was like, you have to choose your lane and you have to stick to it and you have to be the best at it. If you want to be taken seriously, that's what you're going to do. And that's how I was brought up. I think that allowing yourself to play and do things differently, that's when I've received the most love and celebration. Doing something different is always exciting. It's a risk because you're like, oh my God, I hope people are gonna respond well. But then every time that I've taken a risk, I feel like it's paid off so much more rather than stay in the lane and do what the system wants you to do. And that's been an interesting conversation, that duality between me being the creative director of the brand and trying to express myself through my creativity, and then being also a business owner and the founder of the brand. Can I still have fun? Can I still take a risk? Can I still do things differently and cultivate being niche and unique? Because now this is a business and I'm responsible for people, and there's X amount of money we need to make every year to be able to sustain things, and et cetera, et cetera. That's probably where I'm like the most vulnerable, because I want to be doing a collection as if I'm still in fashion school, but I can't, because there's just the reality of things and the fashion landscape. And it's not an easy one to navigate. In the 8 years that I've been having the brand, the first hit was COVID, which was the scariest time for us. I didn't even know if the brand was going to survive. Now there's been all of these struggle in the industry. Everyone's struggling and it's not easy. Part of the fashion dream is to make it look effortless and to make it look easy and for people to be inspired. But at the end of the day, we're all like juggling all of these responsibilities and trying to make a successful business.
What feels like a relevant kind of clicheism to nod to is this notion that what got you to where you are won't get you to where you're going. That's the demand life places upon us to constantly iterate and revise along the way.
Growing up, I had the craziest dreams of becoming this and that and doing this and that. And somehow, by the power of manifesting and working extremely hard and never giving up, I've been able to make so many of my dreams come true, which is just incredible and so lucky. And then you're in it and you realize you haven't been dreaming because you just have so much going on that you don't even have time to dream anymore. And so now I'm like, oh my God, wait, all these dreams are either becoming reality or on the verge of becoming reality. What are my next big dreams? And what are my next big dreams, not only for me as a designer, but for my business and the vision that I have for LDSS? And so now I'm like, okay, let's activate that next chapter by dreaming again and having the time to make big things that I want to happen that seem maybe impossible today happen. That's, I think, a driving force to take things to the next level and to hopefully make more dreams come true.
Well, in the spirit of evolution, you have talked about the dialogue between things like innocence and eroticism or fragility and strength in your work. So as the brand grows in the ways we're talking about, how do you see those tensions evolving?
I think this tension is actually so key to every collection. And when there isn't that tension, it's not as successful. That duality is very important and a very important aspect of every collection and the identity of the brand. The collection that I did back in September was BDSM ballet, and it was mixing two completely different worlds, but that can also be one. And I think these conflicting concepts or the tension between innocence and all these things make it more interesting and give it a twist. I'm very much cultivating that and tapping more and more into what that means for me and what that looks like for a collection. What's interesting is I also envision my work a lot when an artist is working on an album, they're pouring out their emotions and their experiences into an album and they're writing it. And then they have 2, 3, 4 years to work on it and release it and then explore it and then play with it. With us, the rhythm is so crazy. We have to put out something every 6 months, if not less. That can become difficult. But somehow every season I dig deeper into it and I come out with something. It's one of these things that you think, oh, I can't really explore that. But then you're like, oh, let me find a twist and spin it and see what that looks like. And then it becomes exciting.
We've also talked about the specificity of the brand and the incorporation of different elements that in some people's opinion might be niche, but you seem to be a fast-growing favorite when it comes to larger brands wanting to collaborate with you, whether or not that was what you had done with Gaultier or some exciting things you have coming out this fall with larger brands. Why is it you think people want to work with you in the context of collaborations, given that there is that niche sort of element? Or do you think maybe that's why it brings them kind of a halo of independence?
I think that, again, a lot of it is the power of manifesting and dreaming of this collaboration and these opportunities that can bring so much more visibility to my brand and my name and my work, because my platform can naturally only grow so much on its own. So associating myself to bigger brands or people that can shine a light on what I do and make me more visible is an incredible opportunity always. And then getting the keys to the most amazing atelier in Paris where people have 20, 30, 40 years of experience working on couture pieces and still have the soul of Jean-Paul in the atelier. It was incredible. And so my whole thing was, I'm going to show my couturier side. And I wanted to be extremely powerful in storytelling and go absolutely crazy with creativity and be limitless. And actually, before I started working on the collection, he gave me carte blanche. We had a lunch together and he was like, you can do exactly what you want. And if anybody tells you otherwise, tell me and they'll be in trouble. He was super generous, super humble, super protective, and very much, I love what you do. Be fully confident with what you want to put out. Just like dream. And every day that I was going to this atelier, which was so close to my house, it was like a 3 minutes walk from my place. I was just so happy and grateful to be living that. That was one of these big dreams that I was talking about earlier that I got to live. On the last day, I was like, oh my God, I don't want this to end. This is just so much fun to do haute couture because it's just such a unique world of infinite possibilities and you can create anything and one person will collect it and buy it and that will be it. It's just so unique and special. For him to create that space for a young queer designer like me to be able to feel safe and brave enough to put out a collection that pays tribute to him and showcases what I do and what I stand for was just, dream come true.
I mean, it's huge. I think most people you talk to look back and reference people like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Alexander McQueen, and John Galliano as the primary reasons why they got interested in fashion. These people
Totally.
really created so many different benchmarks in the culture when it came to fashion's kind of position in it. So where does the experience of design begin and end for you?
It's everywhere you look. It's everything that you wear, buy, drink from, eat from, sit on. It's a whole world. It's just something that if it's in you, you'll get to a hotel room and you'll want to change things and make them look like you. It's interesting because with being a designer and working for a fashion house, you actually get to create every single aspect of everything that the house puts out, whether it's women's wear, men's wear, couture, furniture, set design, sound design. It's just everything. So it's really limitless, and it's really interesting because that creativity can lead you to even explore things that you didn't know you were going to explore. So that is just this side of the job where you end up doing things that are so inspiring that you didn't even know you could do, and that just are so within you that it could be applied to any kind of medium. And that's the greatest part about being a creative, is being able to collaborate with other artists, designers, brands, and people contributing to culture. That's priceless, because when you are able to make an impact on culture, it's just that much more significant.
We've talked about influences from the past, and you've often said that you look to the past when thinking about the future, which I suppose is true about all of us. It's just part of our nature because it's something that we know. Hindsight is 20/20. But when looking at the past today, what does that say to you about the future?
You know what? I don't really know how to answer that question. Whenever it's questions about the future, I don't really know how to answer it, because I find it hard to think about the future so far ahead, because I always think a season ahead, and already for me, that feels so far away. And sometimes we'll be working on a project that's a year or year and a half lead time to when it then comes out. And I feel, oh my God, is that still going to be relevant in a year? Because you're just wondering how it's going to age or evolve. And then actually, oftentimes you look at collections or references from the past that are like 50 years old and are still as cool today as they were back in the day. So I find temporality in fashion to be such an interesting subject, because I'm always living in the present and wondering what I want to wear in the future, but I can't think of the future that far ahead for some reason.
And it's such a great segue into our last and final question about the now and being present. So what is contemporary now?
I think contemporary now is being able to showcase yourself in the most authentic way, being able to be recognized for your uniqueness and cultivating that uniqueness with audacity and strength, and defining your future in the most confident way possible, and having a community around you that can help you build that message, surround you, and collaborate with you. I think that is super important, not only in fashion, but in every, I feel like, industry, when we're living in a world that's so chaotic right now. And it's sometimes hard to focus on your own craft or thinking that what you're doing is even relevant. But we have to keep dreaming, and we have to dream big. And I think being contemporary now is allowing yourself to be unique and be as visible as possible.
Amen. Thank you, Ludovic. Well said. It's been a beautiful conversation, and thank you again for the time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of What's Contemporary Now. A special thanks to our producer, Sasha Grinblatt. Audio post-production by Chase Coughlin, with original theme music by Joseph Topp-Miller and Chase Coughlin of The Black Soft. And visual design by Aaron Meager and Graham Prentice. Subscribe now to be the first to catch new episodes each week. And if you've enjoyed listening, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for additional content, and join the conversation. Let us know what you think is contemporary now.